if you could own a wild animal as a pet, what would it be?
Wild animal as a pet. Wow. I think a wolf would be pretty cool, but like, or a horse, like a wild horse, but it would be under the circumstance that like I owned enough property for them to just like still be wild, but like I knew they were safe because they were like, in my property.
Yeah. I'd maybe get like a mountain goat or something.
Oh, yeah, or a goat. That's also a really good option.
You come home and it's just like on the wall, like sort of perched on the wall, like on the third floor. Like, how did you get there?
I love goats.
Yeah, I used to work on like a farm when I was younger, and it was like one of those places where the kids could come and like visit, and you could sort of show them the animals and stuff, and there's like play stuff for them. And we used to carry these little like pygmy goat. What do you call like a goat? A baby goat? A pygmy goat? Baby. Anyway, a little one, yeah. And they would just fall asleep in your arms as you're carrying them around because obviously it's quite warm, and they would just nod off in your arms, just carrying this little goat around. It was so sweet. Like, it was a good.
I remember there was a point when the algorithms were suggesting goat videos for a couple of years there, and I just went down that rabbit hole so many nights, just like watching goats do weird shit with their mouth and stuff, and
they're
or like
strange animals.
Goats, you know what I mean?
Yeah, have you seen the goats that like faint when they get scared?
I know, that's so sad and adorable at the same time.
I think it's just in their nature, isn't it? Or is it like a defect? Are they meant to be like that? I don't know.
Super weird.
Can you imagine if we did that? Like people just, you get nervous and you just fall over.
That would be so inconvenient. You know what I mean? Like if you're flying a plane or like you're just driving a car.
Well, yeah, I suppose people be really easy to rob because like you just scare them and they just fall over. Like, okay. There'd either be loads of robbery or like none at all because you could just go and steal your shit back like immediately. Yeah.
That's a really good point. Wow.
Are you glad you signed up for this yet?
That's awesome.
Yeah. I am. Well, anyway, I'm going to segue neatly into something relevant to anything important whatsoever. So there's something that I've seen this a few examples of this in like musicians that I've chatted to on the podcast, and actually just people I know like day to day, where they kind of were in one sort of career path or trajectory, and then sort of somewhat changed that into a musical sort of direction. Like I saw sort of reading up about you that you weren't initially pursuing music as studying it as such, and then you chose to kind of change direction somewhat. I understand that you were sort of doing a lot of stuff with bands, but is my understanding correct that you sort of decided to change what you were studying? Is that right? Were we talking about? I remember I was reading. I can't remember if I've conflated the two things. You were talking about architecture, which I thought was interesting. But I can't remember exactly what it said. What you said you were studying, and then you changed to music. What was it that you were doing before that?
Well, I think that was just at a really young age where, still in grade school, under having the pressure of like your parents and your guidance counselors being like, you got to go to college, you got to figure out what the hell you want to do in life. And at the time, I would have loved to do music, but it didn't seem like that was going to be allowed or possible. So architecture was kind of like the next thing that I wanted to pursue. Like there was a whole bunch of courses I took in grade school to kind of put me in that direction. And then I like was an intern at like an architecture firm, and I was actually really into like residential architecture and stuff like that. But I don't know, that was way long ago. Like I still wanted to do music. I just didn't know if it could be like, possible, until I basically just made the decision to be like, yep, well, you're going to probably piss off your parents. You're probably going to be broke for a while. Just make the deep dive. And that's what I did.
Yeah. So, was that like a nerve-wracking thing, or were you quite confident doing that? Did you know, okay, this is just what I want to do? Like, or is it something you really sort of, was there the thought process of like, was there any question you were going to, once you made your mind up sort of thing, were there any second guesses, or were you very much just like, nah, this is what I'm doing now? Oh,
there was always second guessing for sure. I mean, even today, you know what I mean? Like it's one of those things where it was super overwhelming because I was like, how am I going to make this a career? But I think I was able to kind of take it in strides and just say, well, let's just start off by the main goal at that time was just to be like, okay, surround yourself 100% with just music, even if it's like, let's say I had to get a job and, make sure it's at like a music store, even if the pay wasn't good, you're still at like a music thing. You know what I mean? The courses I was taking in college at community college, I switched from like, all these like math courses and English courses and stuff like that. And eventually said, well, I don't want to go to school for music. So while I'm here, I'm just going to take a few music theory courses. And then I ended up actually going to trade school for audio engineering at night. So I was like doing this thing where by day I was taking like a music theory course, at nighttime going to this other place for audio engineering, and then, going to a friend's house and we would just like make beats until like 4 a.m. on like an MPC. And it was like that for like 2-3 years. You know what I mean? That and also playing in a band and like going on a couple of DIY tours and, so the entire goal was just to surround myself with music. So,
yeah, I think it's so difficult it's a weird one because I think nowadays it's not so difficult maybe to surround yourself with music, but it is difficult, I think, to surround yourself with the part of music you're trying to pursue. I put out like little guitar teaching reels on Instagram and I'm doing this podcast, and I'm a guitarist, I write songs, and it's hard to know what balance of things I should be doing I guess there's no right answer, is there? But, how do you kind of figure out where your priorities are with your sort of musical pursuits?
Yeah, well, back then I didn't really know if it was going to become a career or not. So my priority was just to be like, well, you just need to 100% do music for the time being, and hopefully it'll kind of form into something, right? And that's when YouTube happened, started doing YouTube videos, started meeting other musicians, getting in bands. But I don't know. I kind of feel like you have a better grasp on like balancing stuff today, because like you were saying, you're posting reels for educational things on guitar and doing the podcast, for example. I think that already is a way better balance than like what I have going on, because I've been terrible with social media this year. So I think it's super necessary for us,
Yeah. Do you think it's a good thing do you think the necessity for doing all this stuff, do you think there are benefits to it? Because it's very easy to look at the negatives and go, well, I don't get to sit and play guitar all day, I could look at it that way. Do you think there are like positives to the, sort of the other side of that coin?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I guess it's just, if you want to use social media as a tool, I think that's the plus side. It's just such a good tool, and there's so many platforms to kind of get your name out there and do stuff with. So I don't know. I think that's also a little bit hypocritical for me to say though too, because again, I do feel like I've fallen off that social media train just a bit, but not because of life stuff, but also because there are other things in the music industry, whatever you want to call it, the music umbrella that I'm pursuing, that have just taken a lot more time away from keeping up with those things, So yeah, I think there's definitely a plus side to it. But do you find it overwhelming?
I think the thing for me, I wouldn't say I find it overwhelming, but I'm very conscious of when I'm not, or I think I maybe over monitor like whether I'm doing the right thing at any given moment, and I think the irony is like, the more I think about it, it's one of those things where it's like a self-perpetuating thing where if I just stop thinking about it, I'd probably be all right. It's not as easy said than done, right? But yeah, because part of me is like, well, you hear about, there's all the stories about the best musicians who, sacrifice everything. It's very like sort of, movie-esque, like Hollywood movie type thing. And so I kind of think anytime when I'm not doing that, I'm like, am I missing out? Am I doing the wrong thing here? It's very hard to know, like, if the balance I'm doing is going to get me to the place I want to be at. But I guess it's hard to, I don't want to second guess it, because these are the kind of things you got to build over years, right? Things like podcasts or bands or just your platform, you've got to build over well, your career. And I think if I'm kind of trying to second guess if it hasn't worked in the first year, it's like, well, how did you find that process of like, have you always trusted in the process, if that makes sense?
First off, that's actually really cool to hear another musician say that. I just want to put that out there.
Yeah.
I mean, if it means anything to you, you know what I mean? Like, I feel like it's nice to just hear so for me, like I'm not answering that question.
No, go ahead.
For me, like one thing about, my wife and I, the dynamic that we have, we both are musicians. We both are trying to do things and we both are like crazy workaholics, you know what I mean? And constantly second guessing, but like also have the confidence to keep, know what we're trying to do is actually like, it can be cool, keep pursuing, stay strong, do that thing. So it's nice to have someone like her to bounce these types of feelings off of, you know what I mean? Of like second guessing, like, okay, am I doing the right thing? And, sometimes if it gets overwhelming, you have another musician to talk to, but that's like our little bubble. So to like hop on a chat here and hear it from you as well, it's like, oh, that's cool. Like that makes me feel good. So
yeah, I feel like people at all stages of, I've been astounded at, I've said it to a couple of people now where there have been one or two people on that just like seem pretty carefree, but they seem to be the exception. I'm trying to think now so I recently chatted to Perry, guitarist in Pendulum, and he was quite, I don't want to say carefree. It implies he's just got no problems in his life whatsoever. Like, I'm sure, but oftentimes if I ask questions about, like something about mental health or about, career goals and stuff, every now and again people have a weirdly simple view of it, and I'm kind of jealous, And by simple, I don't mean like sort of dumb. I just mean simple as in like they just know what they want to do and they're doing it, And it feels so weird, like, for me to just think like that. I'm trying to get more into that mindset. Rabir Masad was a bit like that as well.
Oh yeah.
Like, yeah. So what's it? You said that your wife, you're both musicians. What's that like? Kind of that dynamic where, did you ever get a bit bored talking about music, or does that or do you kind of inspire each other in that way?
No, it's cool because we talk about like, again, like our career goals and all that kind of stuff pretty frequently, so it's really nice to just have that immediate like outlet to speak about that kind of stuff with, and they'll, the conversations about music are anywhere from like your career goals to stuff that's super nerdy about like a chord progression or something, you know what I mean? Like whatever it is. So it's super cool, like really nice to have.
Yeah. Like, speaking of sort of learning from like other musicians, what do you think? I'm a guitarist, and I like to think I'm not the kind of guitarist who hands a drummer a drum part that's just ridiculous, like the MIDI drums where they just like typical guitarist wrote the drummer part sort of thing, whatever, blast beats, kicks, just ridiculous stuff all the way through. Is there anything you think guitarists maybe are missing out that drummers are sort of, I don't want to say doing a better job of, but is there something in the drummer mindset that as a guitarist I could pick up on, particularly maybe from the sort of the way you play?
I don't know. It's weird, man. I feel like there's a lot of guitar players that do a really good job of programming drums, right? And programmed drums these days are just getting to a point where like it's a little bit ridiculous with just how good they sound, and then you have groove packs and all this stuff to kind of assist, right? But I think like a lot of times when I'm, sent session work, the parts are usually very like, the parts are like written well, but there might be certain things that just aren't comfortable to actually maybe play on a kit that like a drummer wouldn't actually move their hands that way to do. I also think like, certain embellishments, and, sometimes I've been sent stuff where all throughout the section, it's just being embellished. So like, there's no like flow to it. There's no like evolving kind of thing on the drums. It's just always like going crazy. And then it changes into the next section. You know what I mean? So for like me, if I'm approaching from like, writing drums from scratch, I want to build it. So like, it'll start with the groove and be literal with it, then maybe move to embellishments, then like, a fill to just completely change it, or like maybe a display symbol thing to like just take the feel completely out, so that when you hit the next section, it like immediately is just this like back to this release of like, there's the backbeat again type thing, So there is some drummer intuitions that I just feel guitar players will probably never have unless they played drums at some point,
Yeah, there's the thing I find that I always, whenever I'm programming drums, I can do grooves and I can do fills. I can do, like, obviously there are drummers who have more interesting ideas, but I can do stuff that I think is cool. But what I always miss is, ironically, is the embellishments, but like the little, like, just one tom hit in the middle of a hi-hat groove where they just like this one little note where they just go off, and, little things that drummers do where you just see it'll be a little sizzle or a little, just it's something, a change in a dynamic. And that, I think my brain doesn't go there. And I think that's where you get those hours of your craft, where you don't have to think about those things. I'm sure there's things I do on guitar that some of my like drummer friends, probably look at, and like I have drummer friends that can play the guitar, and but there's the fingers are very like static, they don't often tend to make use of the fact that the string moves, you can bend the string and stuff,
right.
And I feel like it's almost an equivalent in that aspect, almost that kind of, how do you build that kind of nuance in, or how is that something you learn, or is it just something do you think you just sort of pick it up as you go? Like, how does it?
I think it's like learning any other instrument. You know what I mean? Like if you spent 3, 4, 5 years learning the drums, then I think you would kind of get certain things to do on the drum kit to better serve like your songwriting purpose. You know what I mean? Yeah, it's just one of those things where you just kind of figure out how to write drum parts a little bit better for the song. If you're a drummer, versus like not being a drummer, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah.
Another example, I don't know if I'm doing a good job explaining this, but another example is that, like, let's say I just finished up some session work for someone, right? And there's all these crazy hits everywhere and like all these accents on everything. And, you as a guitar player might not do that, but this guitar player did, right? And the parts itself were really well written, like where the kick placement is, where the snare placement is. It gave me a good understanding of what they wanted for like a backbeat. And I took it, rewrote all the parts and programmed the drums before tracking live drums, and pretty much took out all of the accents, and then did exactly what I was saying earlier, like, built it as it went. And the email I got back was just like, oh, wow, this like makes a lot more sense and flows a lot more. And what was really surprising about that was like, I didn't really change much of his parts. I just took out a lot of accents, and that in itself just kind of, to him just felt like it was like, oh, wow, it feels like a drummer wrote these now,
Yeah. It's a cool sort of perspective to that kind of less is more, I feel particularly in the rhythm section, bass and drums, that less is more is so like, I remember in the studio with my old band where we had this really, like, there's a part where it went into like a sort of a shreddy riff type thing, or very, very fast paced, like thrashy kind of riff section. And my idea was that the kick, the double kicks are going and the bass is kind of somewhat following it. But then the producer was like, nah, just 4 on the floor. Like, I kept shredding the riff, whatever. And then producers like, just do a 4 on the floor. And we were so disappointed when Mike, the drummer, Tom, the producer, said like, a Vinny, Pantera, like 4 on the floor. And Mike was like, yeah. I don't really know what, because he just does, he's a bit younger than me and he doesn't really listen to like sort of like old school metal. Huh?
It was too simple.
Well, so he knows 4 on the floor, but like when he was saying about like Pantera, and Mike doesn't really listen to Pantera, I was like, no, This is criminal. It's like I sort of found out in the studio. I was like, I can't believe this. I feel betrayed. But yeah, and then the bass, he was just like sliding up and down the neck at sort of, I guess, quarter notes, and it just completely then allowed the guitar to sort of buzz away in this thrashy riff.
Sure, yeah.
So that separation was so. It completely changed the feel. I was like, oh, that's what that wanted,
Yeah.
It just wanted, and we're not. I like to think we didn't overdo too many metal tropes, and Four on the Floor is obviously kind of one of them. But do you have any like pet peeves or things that like, you know, that not that you think are like bad, but just things that you personally, when you hear them, you know, like drum grooves or fills or something that you just kind of go, ah, not this again. Like,
Yeah, I used to do this. There's two things I used to do a whole bunch of, and it really stemmed from Matt Halpern's playing. But what I'm about to say is nothing against his playing.
Blame Matt. I'll pass that on.
It's just when I took that from his style and tried to incorporate it into mine, I started noticing I would just overuse it, and that is basically just accenting everything on cymbals.
I know what you mean. Yeah.
Like going crazy with, he does it really well especially for like periphery. It works super well for that. But I don't know. For me, I was just starting to be like, wow, why did I put an accent there? You know? And then another one was using the 4 toms in between kick patterns. I think it's cool, but I had to kind of figure out how to put that in towards like the end of phrasings, not during like the entire groove. You know what I mean? But the cymbal accent thing is actually a pretty big pet peeve. I was in a band called Monuments, and for a pretty short period of time, but Ollie Steele, do you know him?
I've met him once. I met him. It was at Bleed From Within. They played London about 6 months ago. I was like, oh, I know who that is.
That's cool. Yeah. Well, he called me out. At a rehearsal one time for Monuments, and basically was just like, why are you putting a cymbal accent there? Like, we're literally not doing anything on that hit. And you're just putting a cymbal and being like, that hit is important. It was something like that, right? He's called me out on a lot of stuff, which is actually kind of nice because he said certain things to me when I was in Monuments, and also because I've also tracked drums for a lot of his solo material too, right? And he's very picky with stuff, but also not. But yeah, he called me out on that, I remember. And like, I remember just being like, huh, he's right. I do need to kind of chill out with that, you know? Like, there's no reason to like put a cymbal accent there when like the rest of the band is literally not doing anything else there either, you know?
Yeah.
So yeah.
It's that like someone that I think does it well is drummer in Sleep Token. He does a lot of choppy stuff. I'm not always a fan of the choppy kind of style, but I think he kind of accents quite well with the cymbals. I think it kind of you feel like you know why he's got like 4 or 5 crash, or how many crash cymbals he's got, you know, and different kind of variations of things. You feel like they have a purpose, whereas some drummers I hear, I feel like that cymbal could have been that one or that one or that, you know, it was just a hit. But how do you find like when it comes to like the sessioning particularly, how do you find the balance of like injecting your thing versus, you know, essentially doing what the client or the band or whatever wants you to do? Do you just kind of follow the brief, and do they often say, you know, have fun, or like where do you fall on that kind of balance between personality and just like getting the job done?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I guess I just try and make sure that I put their intentions with the song first. That's pretty much my approach for like all session work, is like, I'm very much focused on just being like, okay, this is someone else's brainchild. I'm going to start with that attitude, and then we'll kind of gauge it and see what's up. Right. But when it comes to injecting my own style into their song, you know, if I write a drum fill for a section, right, it's going to be like a fill that is my style. You know what I mean? So just naturally, my style is going to kind of get put into that anyways. So I'm not really too worried about like approaching it from that standpoint of like, oh, how am I going to get my stamp on this song kind of thing, you know? Because it's going to come out one way or another with just how I play a groove or how I do fills, what I'm doing in that fill, you know what I mean? And again, accents and that kind of stuff. Yeah, so I think that's really my main goal with that, is just put their their needs and wants for the song first, and then go from there. So,
have you found like taking so with the session work, particularly where it's like clients maybe sending you something, you know, where you're not necessarily involved in the band at all, you're just like sort of doing the, you know, sort of operating the parts, if you will. Have you picked up ideas over the years for your own creative creative purposes? Have you sort of listened to bands that you've been sort of asked to drum for? Has that influenced, have there been any moments that you've picked up on that you think have maybe influenced now how you play and how you write, like for future projects?
Yeah, absolutely. There's not like a specific moment I can recall, but I totally can, you know, confidently say that because of a lot of session work that I've done, there's definitely been moments where I'd be like, oh, that's a really cool thing. I should try and incorporate that into like something I'm doing, right? For sure. So I think the session thing is really cool because I like rarely play drums these days to just play drums, which really sucks. But, you know, like when I look at the drum kit in the room, like right next door, I almost don't look at that thing anymore as like a fun thing. To me, it's just like, that is very much like this workhorse, you know, like it's either for session work or for videos. Like that thing is, you know, even when I sit behind it, it's very intimidating. There's all these microphones, these pieces, you know, there's like lights, cameras, everything all over the place. Right now, I have like a couple of other smaller kits, like practice kits. I have like an E kit kind of thing going on right behind me. I'll sit on that thing and be like, this is way more fun. I can actually be like a drummer, you know? Where was I going with this?
Sort of about your sort of relationship with the, what is talking about? Oh, I think I've blanked. But you're talking about your sort of relationship. I was interested. I mean, either way, I was interested. The next thing I was kind of going to ask you on that, from just what you said, was, you know, about your relationship with your instrument. Like, how do you feel you know, does that make you nervous at all? That kind of that seeing it, you know, like you said, as sort of a workhorse type thing. Does that ever worry you that that's going to suck some of the passion out? And, you know, obviously longevity is a really important thing with career, and you want to still love what you're doing, you know, 30 years time or whatever. Do you worry that, you know, maybe you haven't got a sort of balance that is optimal for making it still that fun kind of thing? Or?
Well, it's weird because it is still fun. Like drumming itself is fun when I do have the opportunity to just like go play drums, just to play drums. Right. But, it's weird. It's one of those things. I feel like you said this earlier, but like having to balance and wear different hats at different points. I go through those phases, which I think which helps to prevent that for me personally. So I might not feel like a drummer right now as we speak. You know, I feel like right now I'm much more in this like mixing / like engineering space, because I'm like taking drum samples. There's like a project I'm trying to mix and work on a template for something else. So like I'm wearing that hat right now, you know, and that's something I'm very much passionate about. But I know the minute that I start going to do drums for like the next cover or whatever it is, I'm going to take it very seriously, get back onto like, you know, endurance runs and all this kind of stuff to go be able to perform that cover and do whatever I need to do for the video and whatnot. And I'm going to be wearing that hat then, you know what I mean? And I'll be super involved with it as well. So I think that kind of keeps that passion alive, is like just having multiple things you have to switch into and be very much about that thing for, you know, 2, 3, 4 weeks. And then you switch to the next thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I'm sure this is annoying me now, because I'm sure someone said almost exactly what you were talking about, that kind of going in on something for, you know, a certain period of time. And I cannot for the life of me, I could sort of relate you to someone, but I cannot remember who it was. Also, total thing I just had to say, because I happened last night, complete sidetrack. Sorry for any, this isn't even the slightest bit useful, but I saw 2 celebrities yesterday. I saw total change. I can't remember what it was earlier in the conversation that made me think of this. But speaking of musicians, so I'm in Birmingham in the UK, and I have no idea why these people are here, but I was having a drink with some friends, and Joe Jonas and Sophie Turner just walk into the bar.
Whoa.
And I was just sat there like, what are you doing? And I saw a couple of girls, went and talked to them, and apparently they live somewhere. One of them, I don't know, or both of them live here. But it's just a weird moment. And then
That's pretty cool.
yeah, and then so my friend works behind the bar, and I went up to the bar. Sorry, I just had to get this out because I thought it was funny to tell someone. And he said, "Oh, you can put some songs on the playlist if you want." And as a joke, I went, "Play Game of Thrones." And then this blonde girl comes up next to me and my friend thought it was her and just went bright red. I was like, "Oh no, it didn't." But it turns out it wasn't her. And I just fully thought, no, it was her, but she wasn't the one that walked in as I said that, because I just died inside when I thought, "Oh no, I just ruined." Like, yeah, sorry, I just had to.
Are they like dating or something?
I think they're married.
Oh, they're married. Oh, shit.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. They're together. Yeah. But yeah, it was just a weird. Sorry, I just had to completely sidetrack that. I just remember something you said earlier made me think of that. I can't remember what it was. Probably super important, but I just had to share that. I was like, yeah. What was I gonna? Oh, sorry. I've completely. This is my fault. I've sidetracked away.
Good. See, it's a Sunday. We're chilling. You know what I mean? Like.
Yeah. It's always, I always prefer the conversations where I feel like it's kind of, you can, it's the whole point of doing it. I've had so many people on the podcast where they go with like a long answer and they're like, "Oh, sorry, that was a really long answer." It's the whole point. Like, if we were doing like a 10-minute interview, obviously I would just write 10 questions and do a minute. You know what I mean? Or write like 5 questions and, I actually really like talking to other people. I don't like being around lots of people. Yeah.
But I do enjoy talking to people. Like, I feel like that's maybe not so much a thing these days just because of social media and stuff, but like, I really do like having a conversation. So like a good example is like, I don't know, if we are in a public setting and I ask someone like, how's your day? Or like, what have you been up to? And if they like start telling me, to me, I'm like, that's cool. Like, I'm genuinely asking, you know what I mean? But at the same time, if they're short with it too, I'm like, yeah, that's cool. They don't want to get too much into it. Whatever, right?
Yeah, I was literally chatting to my friends last night. Oh, was it the night before? Just saying how I feel like something that's a complete lost art is just like going out by yourself and just meeting people. Like just going and I'm a young guy. I live on my own, so like if I don't make an effort, I've got friends and stuff around here, so like I'm it's cool. But if I don't make an effort to go out and meet people, I just don't meet people. I could sit at home all day. And so the other night I was like, screw it, I'm just going to go. Like, none of my friends are around. So I was like, screw it, I'm just going to go to the pub that I normally go to and just say hello to someone. Funny thing was, some of my friends were there anyway, so I didn't even have to. But I was proud of myself. I was like, yeah, I just gone and, and I remember like another one, speaking of, when you just sort of start talking to someone, I can't remember where I was just at a shop buying something. I think I had quite a nice jacket on, and some guy just said, "Oh, I really like your jacket, by the way." It was just a nice, like, he sort of asked where I got it from. And you feel really good when someone, it was such a minor thing, it's just someone, and you realize like, yeah, and it's so easy, and it's so easy to say that, like it doesn't cost anything, and it's so effortless. But no one does it, and I feel like it'd be nice if more people just started conversations, like just for the sake of having a conversation, on the train. Or something.
I know. I feel like I've been in a bunch of those situations just when like I do like my weekly things where I go out, like if I go grocery shopping or something, and I'll have these moments where like, I don't know, someone might be in line and might make a joke, and like I might laugh and be like, and just kind of stay quiet then, right? But like, I don't mean to be that cold. I don't know. It's just in the moment, I like in my head, I'm like, should I like keep going, or like, should I stay quiet? Is that weird? Is that awkward? It's almost just like my brain does this weird thing to me where it's just like, no, keep your mouth shut before you be weird. You know what I mean?
It's generally an okay rule to have. Keep your mouth shut before you're weird. It's a good.
But like, it's also not bad to just take the risk, because it's like, I'm just trying to be nice. You know what I mean? What's the worst that can really happen?
Yeah.
And I don't know this person, so it's not like my career is just over. But that's just what my brain does, because I'm crazy, I guess.
I think the other thing I've noticed is like, if you're walking past someone on the street, and sometimes you feel like you make more effort to not make eye contact or to not look at them or engage than it would be just to look and smile. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's like, I feel like it's kind of like and to be fair with this podcast, I like, part of why I started it was partly because I just want to meet people and chat to them, and partly because I've seen so many interviews with people. So like, I'm a big Mark Tremonti fan. He's like my sort of guitar hero, and I've seen so many interviews with him about gear and stuff. And I kind of just want to hear him talk for an hour, just with someone about whatever he wants to talk. You know what I mean? Like, if you like someone in that way, if you're a big fan, I feel like, I don't know. There doesn't need to be much of an excuse to just have a good conversation, but it seems to be harder and harder to have one nowadays. Like, what you kind of this is something I wanted to ask earlier actually. You talked about YouTube, getting started with that. Are there any or many musicians that you started out, making contact with and sort of interacting with back when you started, that have sort of progressed in a similar way to you, where you've seen them grow? Are there any musicians out there, or do you feel like you kind of, have they all disappeared? What did you sort of start? Are there any musicians out there? Kind of... Go on, sorry.
No, you go.
So I was just saying, are there any musicians that you feel you've sort of grown with as from when you started sort of getting your music out there online and stuff? Are there any musicians that you saw with 100 followers and now they're pros or whatever? Are there any like that?
Oh yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think everyone just kind of, the musicians that I feel like I toured a lot with and grew up with, they're just, all of us are just kind of, we just spread apart and just, everyone's still doing music, but very much like their own type of route, which is cool to see for sure. And the whole social media growth too, there's definitely been that. I've definitely seen a few people just go to whole other levels with it, it's pretty cool. It's pretty cool to see for sure. A really good example of that is Andy Sizik. You know who he is?
Yeah, I've had him on the podcast. Yeah.
Yeah, he's awesome, and he actually lives he used to live a minute drive from me, practically in the same neighborhood. And we used to go to this coffee spot way back in the day, and just kind of hang out there and just kill time. And that's a perfect example. You know what I mean? We literally share, if I have friends over for a sporting event, I might invite him over if he's in town or something, so it's cool to have that, someone we used to just hang out with, but now is also just touring a bunch, killing it on social media and streaming and all that kind of stuff. Right.
So. Yeah. He's definitely, cause that's kind of how my understanding is that's how he sort of got his career going, basically, wasn't it? Through YouTube. Is that kind of roughly how? I don't know how involved he maybe was with local bands and stuff, but my understanding is YouTube is kind of what propelled him sort of really into the professional space, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Oh, nice.
Another good one is Alex Rudinger. My best friend, pretty much. Him and I grew up drumming together. You know what I mean? He started touring way earlier, with Threat Signal, and then he started doing a whole bunch of stuff on YouTube and still is doing a really good job on it, but he's another good example, grew up together in the same city and is just now still doing that thing on YouTube or session work, touring, whatever it might be, so.
Yeah. You said about, I know it's only sort of throwaway comment, but you're saying about sort of, just having a coffee or whatever, or sort of killing time, you and Andy hanging out. Where do you find your balance between just killing time, chilling out, having your sort of your headspace kind of time versus work? Where's that balance for you? Because I know so many musicians, definitely myself included, feel guilty when they're not, especially when you're self-employed. No one's telling you to work or not to work. So anytime you're not working, it's oh, I could be working.
This actually kind of works out because I wanted to ask you about, because you mentioned mental health when you reached out to me, right? So this ties really well into that because I've noticed that I need to completely step away from music and have other things to do. I think I'm getting really old. I'm 33, but I feel like I'm just 60 inside,
Old soul.
Because my ideal day would just be to wake up, have coffee with my cats, maybe have a nice conversation with my wife, not even do anything music related. You know what I mean? Maybe go drive my car or something like that. Come back home, hang out more with my cats, maybe do like an outside gardening project, right? And then have dinner planned, maybe have a drink, and then just go to bed with my cats.
Nice.
You know what I mean? Like that is, for me, that's how I like step away and like kind of recharge, you know, just go do shit like that where I'm not thinking about music. I'm not thinking about social media. Recently I planted a bunch of trees in our yard, you know, and it just felt so good to like spend my money that like I earned doing music on something that was like making, you know, a big difference to me, because I'm going to see those trees every day, you know what I mean, moving forward. And I just thought it was really cool that I was planting trees to like do some cool little gardening thing, you know? So it was a big deal for me, you know, like just to go outside and like not work on music or do anything and just be outside, nice weather, doing some gardening stuff, you know? Does that make sense?
Yeah, for sure. Like I can relate. I moved into this apartment that I'm in, like a year and a half ago ish, and well, nearly 2 years. And but I've sort of, you know, it was pretty. It wasn't like rough, but it took a bit of work to get it like to a point where I like it. And you know, I see what you mean about like, you know, your hard-earned money and you put it into the things around you. You know, there's something kind of boring but exciting about buying a new shoe rack or something, you know, like because it feels like an extension of your sort of personality a bit, as you sort of project your personality into whatever you know. And I think
it's simple, but like it's nice. So
do you have any kind of things beyond just like beyond just sort of switching off? Do you have any things that you do on a day-to-day basis, or like or just like as an ongoing thing, just to keep yourself like mentally in check and in the right sort of headspace?
Yeah. Working out has always been like a pretty big thing for me. You know what I mean? It kind of transitioned over the years from like lifting weights and, you know, doing that and, into the most recent thing. It's not really recent, but, jujitsu.
Yeah.
That has been really awesome for that. It's been terrible for my body, but like it's been good for the mind. You know what I mean? Like, cause when you're there, it's such a different atmosphere, you know, like you're not really thinking too much about, work and like all the bad stuff or anything that causes you stress, because I don't know, you're just worried about the person trying to choke you or something. You know what I mean? You just literally are not thinking about that stuff. So that's really helped. But
I think it's really good to have. Yeah, I think it's really good to have things that completely, because you know, if you're just chilling, like doing nothing, your brain can go wherever. You know, it can go to a good or a bad place, or kind of sit wherever. Whereas if you're doing something that fully requires your engagement, you can't think about whether something's going well or whether something's going badly, or you know. And I think like as people, we need more of those. As a society, I feel like we need more of those kind of activities in our lives, whatever they might be. And like you said, jiu-jitsu, like even if it's not as much as like getting choked out, you just still have to be concentrating the whole time.
Yeah, totally.
I got really into like rock climbing, or like bouldering, but I stopped because I was kind of concerned for my hands. It's like I want to keep fit and I enjoy it, but I want to, you know, I wanted to get more cardio in, and B, I was like, if something does happen, if I like break a finger or pull something, especially if I do permanent damage, it's like I enjoy it, I do like it, but I'm not really willing to risk my career for the sake of so I do like I lift weights now and run and stuff, so like my shoulders that are currently here on frame were like maybe a bit further down here a few months ago. Hopefully I'm putting the guitar videos out, you know, like the teaching reels, and I'm hoping like in 6 months time that I'll just be a bit bigger in the frame. I'll just have to zoom out a bit, like it's like my workout diary. I can just see, like I'm so vain, honestly.
That's awesome. I
Yeah,
mean, that's another thing too. Like I like having other hobbies, and not even just things that I really am passionate about, outside of music. Another good one for me is cars. I'm super into cars. I don't really go to car hangouts and that kind of stuff, or like I don't really ever post about that stuff on social media. And it's nice because it's very much like a me thing. You know what I mean? And I kind of just want to keep it that way. It's just this thing that like, yeah. And if I meet someone who's also into cars, we start talking, then that's even better. But yeah, that's like another really good thing that kind of takes me out of that element. It's just, I'll lay in bed, just go down the rabbit hole of watching all kinds of car review videos and that types of thing, So, just, yeah, having these things to totally take me out of that entire work mentality is, and I find it helpful for working too, because when I come back to like, okay, it's time to work now, I feel like my brain is really productive because I gave it that chance to like reset,
Yeah. Is it with when it comes to like cars and stuff, is that something that you is it just like an interest is in like you enjoy just like sort of reading, watching, listening, or you involved, do you like actually like work on cars and stuff like that, or is it more just like a sort of an interest, like a more research based kind of thing?
No, I would love to work on cars, to be honest. I actually want to buy a lift just so I can like do stuff too. I have a Mustang that's just this terrible money pit and like such a project car at this point. You know what I mean?
It's cool though.
Yeah, it's just, I love that thing. It's super fun. It's just, again, it's like a very much like a me thing. And, I have some goals to like get something else in the future, you know what I mean? And just have fun with it. But again, it's nothing I would ever put on social media or like, go to car meets and all that kind of stuff. Maybe car meets, here and there, but like, I don't know. Again, it's just a very much like a me thing. So
yeah,
I was even going outside and looking at it and then looking at my trees. I'm just like, sweet.
Cars and trees, that'll do. Yeah. I know what you mean. It's simple things. I've really got into like stand-up comedy lately. I just really enjoy watching stand-up comedy. Can't say why. I think they're quite good at kind of the good ones. I like. I think are quite good at the sort of discussing the hot button kind of topics, but in an interesting kind of nuanced way. Like they don't get it perfect every time, but it's kind of the point. Like, I quite, and I find that for me is my thing that I wind down, because I feel like it is intellectually stimulating in some way. I feel like I'm not just like watching some garbage, TV show. I feel like it, like I said, if it's a good comic, I feel like I'm in some ways learning about, like interaction. I'm always interested in, learning about communication and stuff. And there's a huge amount of that in comedy,
That's true. Yeah.
So
I love stand-up.
Yeah. Do you have any favorite comedians?
Oh, well, I love, what's his face? Bill Burr.
Oh, I love Bill Burr.
I really like, John Mulaney too.
I've not listened to, I saw Bill Burr over here in Birmingham, a few years back. I've not heard much John Mulaney. I've heard bits of his that have made me laugh. So maybe I need to go down that.
Oh, there's also a guy from the UK. Oh, what is his name? He has the best laugh.
Do you mean Jimmy Carr? The inhale laugh, yeah. I don't get him as much. I don't know.
There's like clips. That's it. I can't get through like a whole stand-up, but there's some moments where it was just like, that was awesome.
Yeah, he has got some good. He's a really good one where I think he's really good as someone. If you put him in a situation, like if he's hosting a TV show or if he's like interacting, I weirdly prefer him there than as a stand-up. I like watching him. I think he's so quick with like comebacks and like interactions, but I don't know if I quite get the stand-up. But yeah, I love Bill Burr. There's
another one too.
From here,
Taylor Tomlinson. I'm
what was
butchering.
Who? Sorry,
she's funny.
Oh, sorry, I missed that. I think I spoke over you.
Taylor Tomlinson.
Oh, I think I've seen her. Yeah, she seems quite funny.
Yeah, she's really funny.
Yeah. And speaking, going back to cars quickly, my I don't know if it's my dream car, but it's my reasonable. I say reasonable dream. It's still not even that reasonable, but you know what I mean. Like it's not like a Bugatti or whatever. Is a Maserati Gran Turismo. like I don't know what year I'd have to go for that to be price reasonable. Like it's still expensive, it's a lot of money, right? But it's not like Ferrari money, you know. I remember looking on like how much they cost. I was like, that might be achievable at some point.
Yeah.
You know, like not now, but annoyingly not now. I'd love to drive one around right now, but there's something about those cars. They're just so like slick and they're quite unique. You see them around, but like there's something, if you see a Ferrari, you're like, whoa, that's a Ferrari. But you kind of know what it's about. You know what I mean? It's quite a, whereas I feel like you see a Maserati, it's like, oh, that's kind of different, you know, and it looks great.
I love cars that have that kind of little thing to it. It's not really like everyone has it, or maybe it's like an older thing you don't really see too often anymore. Or my one of my all-time favorites that I think at some point would be so fun to have is like a late 90s, early 2000s BMW M3.
Okay, yeah. They're known for being like project cars, aren't they? As in like you can really,
very much, yeah. And that, I mean, that's not going to happen anytime soon, but I think that'd be so fun because I feel like getting a car like that, you should also have like an extra set of funds for all the bullshit too. You know what I mean? Like, but yeah, those cars, I just love the looks of them. They just look so cool. They just look like little classy little go-karts, you know?
Is there the stereotype over your side of the pond about BMW drivers? Is that just being the worst basically?
Oh, is that a thing?
Oh, over here for sure. That's like the whole joke is that they like don't have indicators or anything. You know, like just that's the stereotype. Is BMW drivers are just the worst. Like, and it's I don't know. I feel like maybe I just notice it because that's the stereotype, but it does feel true. I feel like Audi drivers actually over here are pretty like obnoxious. You know,
I don't know. I'm trying to think of. I mean, here, like where I am, we just have like even funnier stereotypes. Like we have big pickup trucks with like testicles hanging on the back of them. You know what I mean? Like shit like that.
Yeah. What's what would be? I'm assuming you've watched Top Gear, right?
Yeah.
What would be? You know when they do the challenges, and if they fail the challenge, if their car breaks down, they have to get in like the shitty whatever the substitute car is. You know that like.
Yeah.
What would be your worst if someone said to you, you have to have this car forever? What would just be the worst? Assuming it works, like it all works. It's just, you just don't like the car. What would be like your number one worst car to have?
That's a pretty funny question. Maybe just like an old, like rusted out big pickup truck of any kind. You know what I mean?
Oh, so you're not a fan of it, yeah.
Or something. I like pickup trucks, but like I would never go out and like spend the money on one. But at the same time, like having a big pickup truck like that doesn't have like any creature comforts. You can't really like listen to music or anything like that. You can just listen to the radio. And even then, like you'll lose reception when it's like, it's kind of funny because I'm actually describing a pickup truck that we have just to plow the driveway, but it's like a dirt cheap F-350 just rusted out. And every time I drive it, I hate parking it because it's so big. You know what I mean? It's super clunky. And yeah, I think that would be the worst vehicle to have for the rest of my life.
Yeah. Nice. Cool. Well, so, I mean, obviously I've kind of gone into nonsense questions now about shitty cars and stuff, but I know you mentioned sort of mental health and stuff like that. It's kind of something that's obviously talked about quite a bit among musicians, maybe more so than in years previous, which I think is a good thing. Do you think there's anything that like maybe musicians, anything that you think, not just musicians, but like creatives, could do more of to help themselves in that way? Do you think there are things that like you've learned over the years that I should have done that would have helped me, keep myself on the level kind of thing?
Man, I don't have a clue. I don't think I'm an expert on that by any means, or have I like really figured out some stuff for myself too. You know what I mean? I think kind of just seems like everyone is just in their own world trying to make just to the next day type thing, because I have a lot of friends that also have a lot of mental health stuff going on, you know, and like the weird thing is that everyone is still high functioning with it, which is great, you know. For me personally, I can't stress it enough. You know, what we were talking about earlier is just having these other things to just completely take me out of the elements that do cause me stress, you know. Which sadly to say, yeah, like the music career thing does cause me a lot of stress, you know. But again, having something to just totally take me out of that does wonders for me. So
Yeah, wicked, man. Yeah, well, hopefully people, because I know a lot of, again, hopefully anyone listening that maybe feels guilty about having that time away might just feel a bit better when they hear someone like you say, actually, yeah, I'd like to spend time on other things, you know.
yeah, because I mean, I had to do this thing where I had to tell myself, just because you're taking a break, it doesn't mean you're not being productive. It's still productive. You're just recovering. Recovery is still productive, you know. You'll hear like a lot of gym people always say that. And then I kind of had to take that and apply it to like just life and career stuff too, you know. My wife and I have this thing called a fuck off day, right? Which basically just means one day where we just don't do shit. And it is amazing. We're terrible about making them a thing. Like, I think last year we had like 1.5 fuck off days. You know what I mean? Like 1.5 meaning like one day we actually stuck to it. And then several months later in the year, we're like, yeah, let's have another fuck off day and just not do anything. Right. And we woke up that day and we still worked for like 3-4 hours. We both would like see each other and be like, oh no, I just got to do something really quickly. And then I'll meet you on the couch kind of thing, you know? And by the time we knew it, it was like 2, 3, 4 PM in that range by the time we actually started relaxing. I forget where I was going with this. Oh yeah. So just being able to take a break, the whole recovery thing, I think that's still being productive for me. So I don't like, I've gotten better about embracing it, you know?
Yeah.
Another good example, I don't know about you because you know, post way more frequently on social media and clearly seem to keep up with it a lot better than I do. But one thing that was causing me a lot of anxiety is not keeping up with social media, you know? Oh, like, you know, I need to start working on some drum covers. Oh, I need to go start doing this. I need to go start doing that. And I had a couple realizations with that. The drum cover content for me doesn't really actually do anything from a monetary standpoint, because the moment I upload a drum cover onto YouTube, there's usually a copyright claim, right? So I'm not actually earning any money on that. And number two, it doesn't seem like the content on YouTube that does well are things like drum covers. I think the things that were like people are talking about something, or, hey, follow me while I go do this, or I don't know, stuff like that just seems to do a lot better, right? So I kind of like had to just re-engineer my brain to like be okay with just like, look, man, like you just don't have the time for this shit right now. That's fine, because you're still working on some other stuff that is still very much important. You know what I mean? Whenever you get there, whenever you get to that point of having the time again to focus on social media, it'll be good, you know? But for the time being, just chill out. Don't worry about it.
Yeah. It's when I think, there's the whole just looking at the metrics, you know, you can get so obsessive over. I was thinking the other day, like, why do Instagram accounts or any account show how many followers that they have? Like, what's the actual purpose? You know, like, why? You know, I mean, beyond like the verification thing, is what, especially now that you can just pay to be verified. It's like, well, you know, obviously you would know someone was legit if they had loads of followers, right? But now, as long as they verify themselves and you know, oh, that is that person, like, then I mean, you can. Why do you need to know how many followers they've got? You know, like,
yeah.
If I could have the option to not show how many followers I have, I don't know, would I? It's tempting, because if I took it, then I think it would just look like I didn't have many followers, which sucks. I'm not trying to sound all like self-important. It's more just like, because if I'm trying to grow a platform, the more followers you look like you have, the better. But if everyone just, you know, so then I think I would end up just being a bit of a like, just getting kind of lost at sea with that. But I reckon if they just got rid of the follow account, Like, would anything go wrong? I don't know. Like,
I don't know. That's a really interesting thing right there. I don't know if I would hide the follower count if I had the option, right? Only because I still think like, to grow a social media platform, it's an immense amount of work. When I see like musicians like constantly posting stuff, even if it's just like the simplest thing that they're playing on the drums, for example, right? But you can tell they clearly took the time out of their day to like put some lights up, make the thing look cool, make it sound whatever, and then it's performing well, right? And they're constantly doing that. I think that's a big deal. It takes a lot of time and effort to do that, and that's just kind of like another thing in the music industry that just exists that I think is difficult to do. So
yeah,
I kind of have a lot of respect for social media musicians. Is that even proper to call them that? But does that make sense?
Yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah, it's a different. Yeah, it's funny. There's so many routes you can take nowadays, I guess, with how you want to do it. I think I'm just itching to get back out there. I finally chatted to some people because I was in a band for a long time. I'll show you some of the stuff, actually. I think you quite like it.
Yeah, please.
But it just wasn't working personally for me. Like, it's annoying because I really like the music, but I couldn't make it work with on a personal level with them. But I finally started chatting to some other people that I might actually get something together with. Like, oh, this is I suddenly felt a bit excited about it again. I was like, oh, this is cool,
Yeah.
So I think that, the social media thing, it's great, but you can forget what it feels like to just be jamming with someone, and I've not done that in a while now I think about it. So like, I don't know, going to try and step back into the real world a little bit and
that's awesome.
See when it spits me out. hopefully not for a long time.
It's kind of funny you say that because I had a moment like that in 2021. I was offered to fill in for a band on tour, and it was an amazing tour. And the band was just like beautiful people. I couldn't have asked for like better people to be traveling around the US with, right? Yeah, like every single night that we played, the venues were huge too. The crowds are awesome. And like, I had this moment where it was just like, whoa, this feels so weird to like do something in real life. You know what I
mean? Who was the band, if you don't mind me asking?
It was a band called Zeal and Ardor.
Oh yeah. Okay, cool.
Yeah, so I just did that one fill-in tour with them around the US, and yeah, the feeling was amazing because prior to that, like pandemic had just started the year before that, and everyone was transitioning into this, okay, we'll work from home, make content from home. And that was, social media, I feel like just picked up even more when that happened. Right. That for me, I felt like I was kind of falling behind a little bit, because I just wasn't creating stuff as frequent as I was seeing a lot of these other musicians doing. But then I had that experience and it was awesome because it was just like, oh, wow, this is like, I don't know, this is what I used to do for several years. It's just nice to have that feeling again, like doing something in real life, playing the drums in real life. You know what I mean? Like it was just cool. So yeah, made me feel good again. That's all.
Yeah. Well, that's cool. I think it's a nice positive note to kind of close up on because it's it's important to find those things that like help you reconnect with, with what you're trying to do. So yeah, if you want to, we need a question for the next person. So you can go as left field as the wild animals as pets if you want, or you can go deep and meaningful and go wherever you like, and an artist pick as well. An artist you think deserves some love.
An artist who deserves some love. Let's think. I'll say Brody Smith, a drummer.
Cool.
He is Brody Smith. He's awesome. Plays in a band called Invent Animate. They're killing it now. Yeah, that's my artist pick.
Nice.
Brody rule. Super sick drummer.
Yeah.
Question would be, I didn't even think about. I forgot. You told me about this, and I just didn't even.
It's fine, man. I think it's kind of better when you have to, like, when you get put on the spot, though, because then also it means you can use the conversation if you want to inform the question. So it's, I kind of prefer like just, Although what I do want to do, at some point when I can be asked to edit it into the thing is I've had a few people where I'll ask a question and there's like obviously dead air time where they're just sat there thinking, and I want to like have some sort of like heavy metal elevator music that I can edit in, you know, like if you can sort of like have blast beats but with like, I don't know, like a jazz progression, you know what I mean,
that sounds amazing.
Or I could just Photoshop and put us both in an elevator and put the music on while you're thinking or something. I don't know, like I just cannot be asked to try and edit that.
Okay, well, a good question, for whoever else you speak to next. What is your outlook on social media? Is it overwhelming? Do you find it like a useful tool? I just find it really fascinating when I get to hear other musicians or people in general talk about their view on social media. You know what I mean?
Interesting. Yeah. It's been kind of a running theme. It's just such a, in terms of when I've talked to people, it's just such an ever-present thing. It's kind of hard to avoid. So I think it's good people talking about it, I think. So yeah, man. Anything you want to plug to kind of close up?
I released a new contact instrument, drum instrument.
Cool. Yeah, nice. Yeah.
It's called the Fairview Kit. Alex Reener and myself did something together and we're super excited about it. So that's kind of been my my new endeavor, you know what I mean, with the whole music thing, is trying to go down that alley a little bit more, and we're working on more instruments, and I'm just excited to have that project. So
sweet. Awesome. Yeah. Thanks so much, man. Well, thank you for chatting.
Yeah, thanks for having me.